So the terrible, awful, no-good war in Yemen may be finally winding down. The perennial Saudi airstrikes that have become so common to the people of Yemen and to that country's landscape are apparently slowing down, and they're becoming less frequent. Some are even saying that there's been an 80% drop in recent weeks as far as the average number of airstrikes per week go. And so it sounds like the Saudis are being much less aggressive and much less forceful in the war, which might mean that they're about ready to give up. Now, of course, I doubt that means that they're going to, surrender to the Houthis or anything and let them, be and run their state the way they want. But what it does mean is that the Saudis are at least ready to talk. There have been a lot of mumblings from the Saudi royals that they kind of want a political solution at this point. I think they finally realized that this war that old MBS Mohammed bin Salman got them into is a terrible quagmire that they will never get out of, and that they really just need to pick up their toys and go home. Of course, they want to save face before doing so, because they don't want to look like total failures. They're going to try and come up with some sort of peace solution, maybe, and then, proclaim themselves the heroes for putting Yemen back together. Just recently, the Saudis brokered a deal between sort of the Saudi-backed, Yemen faction and the UAE-backed Yemen faction. That, of course, being, what people call the official government, backed by the Saudis. Of course, it's official because, the Saudis say it's official. There's nothing really that official about them. They're just one of the factions. So you have them, and then you had the folks that the UAE were backing, which were the separatists who, were fighting so that the South could rise again. That was their big credo. They wanted to restore the glory of independent South Yemen, which was, invaded and conquered by the North Yemen government back in 1990, I think, which, I find kind of strange because, isn't that supposed to be, like, really, really against, the UN Charter and all that? Shouldn't Yemen have been sanctioned for conquering a country and invading it? Because, that's kind of what people get mad at Israel for. I'm not making excuses for Israel. I've honestly never thought about this, but it just occurred to me that that's exactly what happened in Yemen. And, of course, since then, there's been a lot of Southerners who have wanted their independence. But for now, at least, they're done fighting the Saudis and the Saudi-led friends, so they're all working together now against the terrible, awful, no-good Houthis, who are bad and you're supposed to hate. And why exactly are they the bad guys? Are they particularly worse than any of these other groups? Nope, but, they don't like the Saudis, so that makes them the devil. But all that rhetoric's being toned down recently, though, because, like I said, the Saudis, they seem like they're trying to make nice. They're not being too nice, but they're being a little nice. Like, they released 200 Houthi soldiers as a goodwill measure today, I believe, today or yesterday. And that, of course, is always a good way to make people happy, release a bunch of POWs. And I don't think it was even a prisoner exchange, which is kind of surprising. They didn't ask, maybe it's just that the Houthis haven't captured any Saudis because the Saudis don't have ground troops. That's probably it. All the Houthi POWs are just other people from Yemen that the Saudis don't give a damn about. Because this whole Yemen war has just been a game for Mohammed bin Salman. It was supposed to be his opportunity to flex his foreign policy chops and to make himself look like a big tough guy for going out and winning a war. That's something that, politicians and monarchists and people, forever, that's always been a big tactic for trying to make yourself look good. Oh, let's go find an easy war for me to go win. Of course, a lot of times, that ends up backfiring on leaders and on countries. I'm reminded of the story of Napoleon III, who was, the French emperor and the nephew of, the big Napoleon Bonaparte that you always learn about in history. Well, Napoleon III came along, and he wasn't a particularly great military leader, and he felt like the people didn't respect him enough. So he thought, you know what, I'm going to go try and win myself a war. And he invaded Germany and tried to conquer some territory there. And that resulted in the Franco-Prussian War, in which, France was humiliated. And Napoleon III was captured fairly quickly once crossing the border into Germany. And it became a very terrible humiliation for French history. And his entire government was, came in and collapsed because he was captured. So monarchists especially should be reticent of stories like that, because if you lose a big war like this, and it really is a big blow to your legitimacy as a leader, because you're no longer the alpha, because that's kind of how monarchies and autocracies work. Is the idea is that the guy on top is the alpha of the whole nation, and that's why he's in charge. And so when they get humiliated and emasculated by like this, by the JV team, the Houthis, it really, I think, does a number to their reputation within their own country. So the Saudis will have to work very hard to try and salvage this disastrous war that they started, to try and make it not look like too much of a loss. I mean, for a long time now, they've been working through Oman, which is a country next to Yemen, and is also on the Arabian Peninsula, and using them as a back channel, because Oman is kind of the only country that's been able to stay on good terms with both the Arabs and the Persians. And of course, because the Houthis are hated by the Saudis, now they've had to, try and seek some protection in Iran, because that's the only country that'll be remotely nice to them. Although, contrary to, propaganda, for a long time the Houthis were not affiliated with Iran. They only quite recently were recognized by Iran as a legitimate government. And of course, they've really not been able to get any Iranian arms into Yemen because of the blockade that's been in effect there for years and years. They can't even get food in. You think they can get weapons in? So anyway, the rumor going around is that these back-channel talks through Oman are going quite well, and that people are optimistic. Which hey, I'm going to try and be optimistic, but nothing's ever certain really until the end, until the peace deal is signed, and the Saudi planes are back in their hangars where they belong, and we see everybody shaking hands. That'll be the point when it's over. But until then, really all this progress can be erased in a single day, just depending on whether or not the prince had his Metamucil that morning. And so I will wait with bated breath for a positive update. So if you gained anything of value out of this video, I would appreciate it if you gave this video a like and subscribed, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.